Hey guys, welcome to the Race on Everything episode 277. We have a pretty big one for you today. We've got the Farah by-election to cover, the budget, plus all the usual stuff. So,
Pretty big one, and it ain't swinging between my legs.
we do have almost 30 pages of prep today. So maybe we'll kind of go through this a little
Yep.
bit faster than we usually do. And also on the budget, Angus Taylor delivered his budget reply speech about an hour ago, so we really have not had much time to prepare for it. So we'll perhaps go a little bit more in depth with that stuff next week. But anyway, we're going to start off with the Farah by-election, then we'll get to the budget. So, Nolsey, surprised by the results at all? I wasn't.
No, not at all. We're seeing polling numbers and etc. where overall three-party preferred One Nation is actually taking over not just Liberal, Labour.
Yes.
And now you've got coalition.
Actually had their number one. They actually beat Labour, the latest Oz poll.
Yep. And not by a terribly small margin either. So yeah, I'm not surprised that Farah went there. Granted, it's not the federal seat of Farah, as some people are. It's a local. It was a local election for Farah, not the federal seat of Farah. Just people are getting that confused online. I just want to clarify. Not the case.
But it was the federal seat, though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like the region of Farah. It's
no.
Fucking the electoral breakup of that area is fucked. But yeah, want to clarify that so people don't get confused. But yeah, no, I'm not surprised. And yeah, the coalition, what's left of it, I guess, really, it has now pivoted to saying we're not going to allow migrants and non-citizens on welfare and shit, which is that's the best they can offer within their party lines.
Yeah, that's right. So, I mean, we will get a little bit into the coalition's migration policy. We'll come to that a bit later. But, yeah, first of all, I'll just give everyone the latest numbers on Farah. So, almost all of the voters counted, of course, and David Farley of One Nation, who was supposed to be actually of the Labour Party for a short period of time, and also supported mass migration, including mass amounts of Indians so he could hire them on his own businesses. Anyway, he finished with 39.5% of the vote. Second was Michelle Millthorpe, who was the Teal independent who says she's not a Teal, even though she is funded by Climate 200 and all of the usual donors to Teal candidates. She finished with 28.4%. The Liberal Party came in at 12.4% and the National Party came in at 9.7%. So the coalition, the Liberal Party and the National Party, I think did themselves a great disservice by running candidates against each other. Especially in a seat like Farah, where there's supposed to be an understanding that it's one or the other. Because remember, Tim Fischer, the former Deputy Prime Minister from the Nationals, held Farah for many years. And then you had the Liberal member, Susan Lee, hold it for many years. But the other reason why this is a tactical error, I think, is that it's made the vote actually look much, much worse than what it is. Because if you had just one party, the combined vote of the Libs and the Nats is about 22%, which isn't that bad. But everyone is going on about how the Libs only got 12.4%. That makes it look much worse. I mean, when the Liberal Party and the National Party are basically the same and have the same policy platform, you're just going to find that the vote is going to essentially be split in half, and that's exactly what happened. So this was a really stupid move on their behalf. But also, I just point that out because it's not quite the thumping loss that a lot of people have been making this out to be. okay, yes, fine. They were beaten by One Nation and they were beaten by Teals. But you know what? They've been beaten by Teals now for the last two election cycles, and they're also dealing with what is essentially a honeymoon period for One Nation, who are just riding
Yeah.
high on the latest spikes in the polls. And as I've said many times before, I don't think it'll last. So I think this is a temporary thing. Um, anyway, uh, the ABC have been very dismissive of One Nation in their coverage here. Uh, on Insiders, they even had just the old lines being trotted out saying that they're full of bigots and racists and everything like that. Um, the
Well, the
coalition
A
has also look. You know
the
what?
ABC, they got so
They're full of
pissy
Indians now.
about this. Oh, yes. It has been
They speak
was
as
it
good Indians.
Gazaport. That's the word I'm going to use for when something is completely and utterly full of Indians. India's biggest fucking trash dump that is literally taller than Taj Mahal.
Yeah, and then
Um,
you've got all this criticism about how the Libs and the Nats didn't put One Nation last on their How to Vote cards. And remember, this has essentially been a convention of both the Coalition and the Labor Party ever since 1998. Um, they put One Nation last because they're supposed to be a racist party. Uh,
yeah,
the Libs and the Nats now, I guess, have finally realized that, well, that isn't really true. So, they, for example, they preferenced One Nation ahead of Michelle Milthorpe, the Independent. And it's like, so what? ABC are kvetching about how this has put the message out there that it's okay to vote One Nation, that One Nation is becoming normalized. It's like, yeah, because they're a normal party by today's awful standards. Uh, and they do enjoy a diversity of support, that crosses class lines, that crosses cultural and racial lines. Um, Initially, no, I mean, they were like a white working class party when they started.
yeah.
Uh, that
Because
has
they're talking
changed.
about issues that were at the time affecting the working class, or at that point, the white working class.
Yeah, it was people who were being left behind by globalization. That's actually how John Howard described the One Nation voter base in the 90s, and he was absolutely right.
I was listening to a podcast by this one like central German guy called Business and Macro. You can get it on Spotify, and he was doing the breakdown of like, oh, okay, so why does populism keep coming back, even though like in Europe we had so many failings of it in the early aughts and late '90s. And he's like, why is there populist leaders here? Why is there populist leaders in Germany and etc. And he literally just goes over is like, oh yeah, by the way, like you go to East Germany, people who were kind of like left behind by what happened in the USSR, and then quickly flooded with like the Turkish guest workers. Yeah, they're because they're the ones economically left behind. Well, like the central cities, flourish from the ability to export their services to more clients worldwide, and da 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 da. They've always voted for against immigration. They've always voted for populist right economics. They've always voted for X, Y, and Z. And I think he was right actually saying that.
Yes. Now, that's why, yeah, I mean, people have been pointing out that there's too much emphasis on the coalition losing votes to One Nation. Not enough people are talking about how that Labor is actually losing those votes too. Now, that might shift because One Nation have now started talking about Western Sydney, which of course is like Labor Party heartland. Now, certainly is not impossible to break that stranglehold that Labor have got there. Certainly, if you look at the ethnic breakdown of Western Sydney, we found that even though, the Muslim vote thing, even though that never really got anywhere, I definitely think that has a future. And all you have to do is look at the makeup of the councils in Western Sydney that are, in many cases, taken up by Islamic leaders.
Yeah.
You also had, of course, the seat of Fowler that went to Dai Li when she essentially ran a anti-white campaign, an implicitly anti-white campaign, but nonetheless, she said, "I am the diverse immigrant, and Christina Keneally is the privileged white woman, white American woman, in fact. Vote for me."
Yeah.
And she won. She won it actually quite convincingly, even though everyone thought that Christina Keneally was a shoo-in. So Western Sydney definitely can fall away from Labor. And where you've got that disenfranchised white vote, the ones who feel like their surrounding suburbs have too many Arabs in them, or just too many non-whites generally, those people are pissed off. And yes, One Nation is still, to an extent, a protest party. Pissed off people vote for protest parties. And considering that they're becoming an ethnic minority in their own country, and sometimes they are just an ethnic minority in some of those suburbs,
Yep.
they're going to start voting on racial lines too. And
If you're in the business of angry people, business is booming.
yeah. And so, look, Barnaby Joyce said, like, after they won Farah, he's like, look out, Western Sydney, we're coming. And yeah, definitely. Um, Even if they don't win any seats, I mean, they could still cause a huge upset. And be very interesting to see the results there because, the Liberal Party doesn't really have a chance in Western Sydney, most of it. So any gains that One Nation make there are definitely going to come at the expense of Labor. So
Oh, of
certainly I
course, yeah.
watch it with interest.
Look, I think
Um,
we're probably going to see a reflexive like uptick in left wing activism as a response to this. I know Friendly Geordies has already been firing off the cannons, unfortunately. He is
yeah.
experiencing twink death at an alarming rate, man. Jesus.
Now, perhaps you are one of those angry working class white folk who may live in Western Sydney or, some kind of familiar or similar area. If you are thinking of One Nation as the protest vote or lesser of two or three evils, whatever it might be, I just wanted to read you something that I found a few hours after the Farah by-election. This one's on social media by the Australian Jewish Association, the AJA. They said, One Nation wins the seat of Farah. Want to hear something crazy? Major Australian Jewish organisations besides us boycott One Nation. For years, we have told them that they were being foolish and potentially damaging our community with their actions. 2 weeks before the Bondi massacre, one of these groups kicked us out of a major communal conference on anti-Semitism because we refused their ultimatum to delete a picture with One Nation leader Pauline Hanson following her burqa incident. Talk about short-sighted. With the way things are going after the next election, Australian Jewish groups may be boycotting a significant portion of Parliament. Do you think it's time for Australian Jewish groups to end their boycott of One Nation? And sure enough, if you read the comments there, you see a whole bunch of people saying, well, yes, of course.
That should tell you everything you need to know.
That boycott, I think, actually ended long ago. Even though the Jews were absolutely terrified of One Nation originally, and the first real act of doxing in Australia actually happened of One Nation members. It was I forget which one it was, but it was some Australian Jewish group that managed to get hold of the One Nation membership list, and they leaked it to the public.
Yeah.
And
The creatives from the 90s.
yeah, and being a One Nation member back then was pretty much on par with being a white nationalist now. You know, nowadays it probably wouldn't damage you very much, but back then it could be actually a pretty serious thing. Now you've got Avi Yemeni out there running a fake political party whose purpose it is to uh, give preference votes to One Nation. Um, Not only that, but I just saw earlier that same group that I read that post from, the Australian, fucking hate Facebook. What is with the autoplay?
Autoplay. Yeah.
Or at least with autoplay, don't have the volume
Was
up.
that was it Linkin
Shit.
Park? Did we get some Linkin
Yeah,
Park?
I
Or
know.
was it
I
the
don't like Linkin
Transformers
Park.
movie?
I don't know. It's coming up because it's a story from Revolver magazine. Just to make it clear, I do not like Linkin Park. I hate Linkin Park.
Finian
Anyway,
likes heavy metal and industrial metal. Like
yeah,
me.
Linkin Park is not. It's not that. Anyway, the Australian Jewish Association. I saw that they were just having like post-budget dinners with the Liberal Party, and they mentioned in there that they support or work with everyone in politics except for the Greens. That's it. So
Boy.
no, it's clear that like the Libs are their preferred choice. But they'll cozy up to you as long as you're willing to cozy up to them, like Chris Minns has shown to be. Okay, now
As long as you're a good guy.
yeah. All right, so I was just going to read this story here from the Australian. This is regarding Farah. So this is Leeton, that is the Riverina region of New South Wales. It's part of the the federal electorate of Farah. It's known as the Rice Capital. They had the highest primary vote for Labor in Farah at the last election. But the same voters who just 1 year ago put Labor first, this time actually opted to go for One Nation. So the area
Oh.
of Farah where you had like the least amount of support, the most amount of Labor support ended up flowing to One Nation. So, by the way, Labor did not run in the seat of Farah because there was no point in doing that.
Yeah.
Nonetheless,
Let's
those
waste money on
voters-
a fucking dead battle. A battle that's been dead for
Yes.
what, decades at this point?
Yeah, well, I mean, even though the Greens still ran there, and so did the Legalized Cannabis Party. I don't know why they bothered, but yeah, they did.
Maybe they're still
But,
smoking
yeah,
some illicit cannabis.
those voters who would have voted Labor in the last election went to One Nation. So, yes, it's showing. It's both sides. It's not just the coalition. It's Labor as well who are losing to One Nation. Now, One Nation did sort of come under fire for having some election signs that had pictures of Ben Robert Smith. And what? Okay, it said he fought for us. One Nation stands with him. And then I don't know. Has he got tall poppies standing behind him there in that photo? I think that might be what it is. Yeah. Look, like I've said before, I see this as too much of a knee jerk reaction. Like his big military man support him, whereas if you ask Pauline Hanson about the substance of the accusations been made against him, she doesn't really have much to say. She just has the standard talking points of, it's a war and we entrust our soldiers to fight a war the way they think appropriate. Okay, what about the killing of innocent civilians, and how the evidence actually stacks up in that regard? I don't like this knee jerk reaction. Like, you know, taking a
Yeah.
position is fine as long as it is informed. But I just do not find people like Pauline Hanson to actually be informed on this.
I think the senility is coming into that too.
She's how old is she? 72, I think.
How fucking old is
Now,
she actually?
something like that. I think she's 72, 73.
71.
71. Okay.
Oh, she's a young bird. Actually, that's not even that old for fucking politics these days, unfortunately.
No, not these days. It's not. No. Um, so the Australian Electoral Commission also got on people's this particular group's back. They were posting the donations and the donors uh, that had been giving money to Michelle Milthorpe, the Teal Independent, and the very purpose of doing this, of course, was to show that she is a Teal, because she got her money from donors who always support Teal members. Now, the problem with the signage is that they actually had the Australian Electoral Commission watermark on it.
Ooh, ooh.
That is actually a serious offence. If you put out like material that's made to look like it was produced by the Electoral Commission or authorised by them, yeah, that's actually like a form of electoral fraud. So that was really dumb. Whoever did that, like you're looking at criminal charges actually for producing
Let's brace for the scale of bull paddling.
yeah. Now, Jane Hume, who was on 7:30 the other night, she refused to rule out a future coalition with One Nation. Tim Wilson, the shadow treasurer, he's also done the same thing. So perhaps they know that for there to be a Liberal National coalition government in the near future, it might need to be a Liberal National One Nation coalition. That's certainly possible. Votes are getting more and more divided. This is all over the West. I saw now that, like, in the UK, some people are saying that they have a five-party system now in the UK.
Yeah, I mean, you got was it Greens, Tory, Labour, Reform and Restore is
Yeah, and the Lib
Restore's coming
Dems
up.
as well.
Yeah, Lib Dems, yeah.
Whereas, yeah, before it was really just Labour, Lib Dems, and Conservative. That was it.
Yep.
And look, this is all part of electorates becoming more fragmented and people voting almost impulsively. They're just so unhappy with the way things are that they're always just wanting to try the alternative and just vote for someone else at the next election. So, yeah, politics has gotten a bit chaotic in that way. Unfortunately, in Australia, the way that's kind of working is like, yes, we've also got that same kind of fragmented structure, but the preferences are basically all flowing to Labor. And that's what's kind of, shoring up their support. Okay, so we're going to basically do live reacts now to the federal budget that was handed down 2 days before time of recording here. So, as usual, I'm going to go through the ABC's winners and losers page and we'll just very briefly go through the main policies. There are a lot, so we won't elaborate much on some of the smaller ones. Certainly, when we talk about property, though, these are where most notable changes came into place: capital gains tax, negative gearing, that kind of thing. So, all right, here we go. We're going to start with income earners. So, cost of living, of course. Well, that's the big phrase that we keep hearing about. And there's going to be a $250 tax offset for more than 13 million working Australians.
Okay,
Now,
that's go fuck yourself money.
yeah, and also you won't see that money until July 2028, um, because it's not going to kick in until the next financial year. So, yeah, you've got a bit
God, that's
to
like
wait for there.
doing reverse inflation. That's like $5 our money. $5 in
Uh,
our money is going to be $250 by
yeah, I
then.
know. How much is that going to be worth at that point in time?
Fuck me.
Um,
We just gave like
but
$539 million to Israel, by the way.
oh, don't worry, we'll get to that part of it as well, um,
Fucking kill me.
which is basically that. All right, so that's due to cost about $6.4 billion. But you know who's counting now. Now these are people that's going to be offered to people who earn their income from wages and salaries, not from investments. And you know this budget is supposed to be about that, helping renters, savers, working class people, not investors, not multiple property owners, that kind of thing. Um, So now let's talk about investors. So they're, of course, down as a loser um, in this cheat sheet. So, so under the current rules, of course, just to remind people if you're unfamiliar here, Australians can take an advantage of 50% capital gains tax discount if they hold an asset for more than 12 months. Capital gain is the profit made from selling assets such as investment property, shares, crypto, or collectible items such as artwork. This discount was designed to encourage investment, obviously. Critics argue, though, that the measure combined with negative gearing has skewed home ownership away from owner occupiers and towards investors, people who have multiple properties and who rent them out or just do them up and sell them every few years. The practice known as house flipping or property flipping. So, the
Yep.
50% discount will be replaced by a discount based on inflation. Investors will always pay at least 30% tax on gains under a new minimum rate designed to avoid people holding on to assets until years when their income is low. Pensioners and people on income support will be exempt from the 30% minimum rate. The new reforms will only apply to gains made after July 1, 2027, with any made before that date still
Yes.
qualifying for the 50% discount. Now, this was one they really emphasized. Albanese points out that they're grandfathering the stuff in. So, yeah, don't worry.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
the problem therein, and I was actually talking to some actual property investors today, some real fucking boomer tier motherfuckers, and, and look, the rot is already in the system. Grandfathering in, like it's all the same five figures, and for some of them dynasties that are doing this stuff, and they're holding these assets and trusts, so they can never get income inheritance taxed or da 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 as a non-liquid asset. But what these people do is like, okay, so say you have like a green title single family dwelling and you want to increase your revenue from rent. Okay. What do you do? Oh, you sell it and buy a duplex at equivalent cost. Therefore, you never actually had to pay capital gains. You never had to pay for it. You didn't have to pay stamp duty. Well, you mean kind of, but like you subvert the entire system because you've just changed an asset from a singular point value to another point value, and that incentivizes the construction of higher density housing and also the importation of more people, because
yes.
the property investors will be begging, screaming, crying, shitting, and coming all at the same time, demanding it.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, look, I saw Christopher Pine on 7:30 last night with Bill Shorten, and I mean, he was just reminding us all of the basic laws of economics, which is there is a lot of demand for housing, but there's not much supply. So, what do? You have to increase supply or decrease demand or do both. these changes to capital gains tax and to negative gearing, which we'll get to, do neither
Yeah.
of those. They don't decrease demand. They don't increase supply. So, I mean, if anything, it would lead to an increase in demand because I mean, I guess that's the purpose of it, which would actually just only push property prices up even further. So, look, as I always say, governments, parties on both sides of politics are simply doing what they have always done, which is try or at least attempt to convince the public that they're trying to reduce housing prices, while at the same time actually refusing to cut migration, which is the only way, the only real practical way, the only significant way that you could reduce property prices. And this is just
Yeah,
another
that's
example of it.
look, like, we got two sides of the market here. We got the I know we've harped on about this, but I really want to cement this in people's minds. You have two sides of the market here. You got the supply side and demand side. The supply side is non-elastic, takes years to build up. The demand side can literally be done and finished with a stroke of ink on paper. But our government
Yes.
refuses to even put pen to paper on this. Hell, to even put neurons to the thought of this, really.
Yes. And by the way, we're going to talk a little bit about this later, but do not believe Albanese or Jim Chalmers, who have both been making this claim that apparently they have cut migration by 45% from its peak. Have you heard this number that they're putting out there? It's
Yeah.
total. It's total crap. Okay.
Oh, fuck yeah.
Yeah, we'll get to that a bit later.
We always
Anyway,
do.
that is the basics of the capital gains tax discount that they are effectively, well, sort of abolishing in the future. Okay, now let's talk about negative gearing. So, again, just a quick primer on this. Negative gearing allows landlords to reduce their income tax by deducting the financial losses from renting out a property, such as when interest payments and other costs are higher than rental income. Any investment property owned before budget night will be exempt, allowing owners to continue to negatively gear their properties. So there you go. Um, Negative gearing will now be limited to new builds only to incentivize more housing supply, more construction. However, investors who buy existing homes after budget night will still be able to deduct losses against residential property income. They will also
Yeah.
be able to carry forward losses to future years to deduct against residential property income. Combined with changes to capital gains tax, this measure is expected to raise an estimated $3.6 billion over 5 years and is expected to help 75,000 Australians buy their own home over the next decade. That's not very much.
Yeah, no.
75,000 Australians over 10 years. That
And
is,
look, it's not gonna fucking encourage new construction because okay, what is listed as new construction? And I actually I didn't think this was the case this morning until I got told this and I looked it up and yes, it's the fucking case. Um, it's only new construction if there's a new title. So what do you mean by title? Well, address. So if you buy lot number 4, whatever the fuck, 56 fucking, whatever the fuck, Menorah Way, here in Perth, WA. We also have Goy Avenue, by the way. I found out recently. Oh no, Goy Court. We've got Goy Court. I found that out recently. And you bowl the place over, make like I don't know a double story when it was a single story 1 acre. That's not considered a new build because it's the same title.
right.
It has to be a higher density dwelling unit, which building companies don't make as much money on as they would with bowling over a place and making a double story. So therefore, no, this doesn't incentivize new building. This doesn't incentivize building at all.
No, the government actually also acknowledged that this would serve to increase rental prices.
Yep.
They claim, or at least this is what it says here in the ABC article, that that will likely result in rents being increased by an average of $2 a week. Uh, I'd say it'd be more than that, but you know, they'll just say that's price rises due to other factors or whatever. All right, so let's move on to. Apparently, we have a winner here. The winner is home buyers.
Nope.
So we've already kind of gone through that a bit. The new changes apparently going to help around 75,000 people break into the market for the first time. Um, so, so it also includes $2 billion over 4 years for councils and utility companies to build roads, pipes, power, and sewage connections to speed up the construction of new housing. The money for infrastructure will support 65,000 new homes, which means the net impact of these policies is 30,000 extra homes. Foreign investors will be banned from buying existing homes for an extended period of 2 years until mid-2029. That won't apply to investment in new homes. So that's pretty sweet.
What?
Yeah.
I was gonna say, like, so like every time I've dealt with a foreign investor buying a new home, and quite literally, I've fucking built a home for a foreign oligarch investor with my own fucking bare hands. They don't buy old. They want to get as much money out of their country as humanly possible.
Yeah. And
that's the Chinese method, at least. I don't, India is probably different, but yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, Angus Taylor was talking about blocking non-citizens from buying investment properties, or only a certain amount of investment properties, and the ABC went fucking apeshit over that. I remember, but the fact of the matter is, most other countries have actually quite severe restrictions on property investment for people who are non-citizens. So, like with the example of China, for example, you're allowed to own like one property, I think, and it can't be for investment purposes.
And then you've only got a 99-year lease on it. You don't own it in perpetuity.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, definitely, if you're not a citizen of this country, you should not be allowed to own property, even if it's not an investment. I don't care. You just should not be allowed to own it. All right. Loser, economic output. So, look, yeah, we don't need to elaborate too much on that. Just listen to any one of our episodes, really. We'll tell you how badly the economy is going. But, they're also talking about things like the protracted Ukraine war and now the war in the Middle East, all those kind of things. Yes, of course, there's many things that the government can't be blamed for, but they can be blamed for how they respond to it. Okay, no change, budget balance. Yeah, I haven't seen his budget reply speech yet, but I bet Angus Taylor is going to be going on about how it's a reckless budget that overspends and doesn't account for the interest payments that we'll have to pay down on future debt, things like that.
Can confirm. I was listening to that driving around today.
Okay, yeah, of course.
Yeah, there's again. He does throw like his biggest spike in his like reply speech is that like, well, all these boons, all these tax cuts. One, they're going to be forwarded onto the lowest rung of the ladder, which is like the Australian people, the Australian working class. Which is like, okay, yeah, that's true. That is going to happen. And then like, oh, by the way, like inflation is just going to eat all these all the sectors that they're actually like reducing spending in anyway. So like, they did this last time. They came to an election with a flurry of tax cuts, and then December the same year, gone. The objective amount was eaten by inflation. Well, I mean, again, from who? Where was the amount eaten from? Oh, well, it was eaten from the regular person, and the tax cuts remain still viable for industries and sectors and etc. That's why they've had staying power, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So a winner, defense. So additional $53 billion will be spent over the next decade, including a $14 billion lift in spending for the next 4 years. So much of this is tied to the AUKUS agreement between us,
Yep.
the UK, and America, of course. They're still talking about manufacturing the nuclear powered submarines here in South Australia, but, believe it when we see it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So defense spending in terms of percentage of GDP is going to rise from 2.8% to 3. That's still not as high as what Donald Trump wants. He wants all American aligned countries to spend 3.5% of GDP. And they're basically saying, well, if you want any chance of us to send you, Australia, one of our nuclear powered submarines, you're going to have to spend a little bit more on your military too.
Yeah, quote unquote, step up your game. Again, American geopolitics right now is kind of pushing Australia to not be a boutique army, as we traditionally have been over the past half century.
But I mean, might I ask, like, when do we ever ask for American military assistance? Never. How often does America ask for our assistance? All the time.
Yeah.
We get nothing out of it. And the idea that we have some kind of a parasitical relationship where we're suckling at the teat of Uncle Sam, as Trump likes to make out, is just crap. So no, we're not free riding off the system at all. We bend over backwards anytime there's a war for Zog.
Yeah, the main thing is like the biggest geopolitical, stick in this quarter of the world is our biggest trading partner, who kind of has no real interest in fucking with us. And the only invasion that the Chinese are doing, like ethnically wise or like materially wise, is their burgeoning middle class trying to get their money away from Chinese taxation, which not doesn't help our goals, but like isn't necessarily like the worst thing for the Australian economy.
No. All right, here's a loser. Family trusts. Yes, so Labor will introduce a minimum 30% tax on discretionary trusts from July 1, 2028, with some exceptions. Yeah, so look, I think last episode we were talking about how many families and businesses take out trusts because they are effectively a legal form of tax evasion.
Yep.
And I think they'd find my description a little crude, but I don't think they would find it inaccurate.
My family has 3, and that's pretty much what it's for.
Yeah. So it's not surprising at all that Labor is looking here and seeing a lot of untapped revenue. And, if it moves, you tax it. And that's what they've done here. So it was about time. It was a matter of time until they were going to do this. So, yeah, I guess, rich people, it's one sort of loophole, you could say, that's sort of being closed.
Family trusts are for the upper middle class.
Yeah.
The people who actually have the the business acumen or the financial acumen, they're going to change everything that trust into a non-liquid asset. They would have done it last month. I'll put it that way. And so like if there's a house in it, basically borrow against it, and then basically invest the total capital of the house to rent it to yourself.
Right.
That's actually one of the things that people do in trusts. This is going back a little bit. Like rich people rent their own houses to themselves.
Yeah, which is ridiculous, but in terms of playing the
In terms,
game, it makes sense.
yeah, in terms of what they're proposing here, that still works. So like, okay, so there's a big bank account that has an absolute shit ton of money in it. And it's tied to a trust. Oh, congratulations, that's now in a managed fund. You can't touch it. A boat, a depreciating asset. Well, you fucking basically take a loan against it's like you basically short your own depreciating assets by allowing another lender to borrow it as a capital as like collateral, and then when they have to return it, they have to pay the original amount on an asset that's depreciated past that amount, basically making them a fucking sucker. Yeah, that's how they do it. That's how that mechanism plays out. So yeah, this isn't going to affect shit. Family trusts aren't losing here.
Yeah, okay. Well, look, they're saying it's estimated to make $4.5 billion over the next 4 years. And apparently, that extra revenue will go to funding tax cuts for workers. Well, okay. Let's, let's see
We
what
shall
happens
see.
with that. I'd say that $4.5 billion will probably be eaten up very quickly before you've got
Oh,
a
it'll
capacity
disappear.
to do.
It'll disappear before fucking July.
Yeah.
They'll be basing that amount on what they can currently see on the board. So, like, what assets are just sitting in stock standard family trusts. They'll evaporate. They'll be gone within. I was going to say, like, the smart money was doing it a month ago. You know, room temperature IQ is probably getting advised by their accountant to do it now.
Okay. Well, if you want to feel better about that, and guys, if you want a general white pill, you're going to love the next one. Here's a winner: Papua New Guinea Chiefs NRL players. Yes, Papua New Guinea, the small country, if you can even call it that, off our
Of
coast
cannibals.
that used to be a territory of Australia, believe it or not. They've got their first ever NRL team called the PNG Chiefs, and we are trying to encourage their best rugby players to play for their own country instead of ours, because yeah, basically any athletic talent that they have in PNG just gets siphoned off over here in Australia. So
Yeah.
um,
Can't we do it the
yeah,
normal way, which is like basically all the rugby teams over here are just full of Maoris for no real reason outside of, well, cannibal biology?
yeah. So you're actually going to get tax breaks if you move to Port Moresby, which is the capital of PNG. Um, oh my god. Okay. All right. Winner: gas companies. So
Yep.
they have, to no one's surprise, avoided the 25% export tax on gas. It was pretty clear from the beginning that, you know, even if David Pocock can get a lot of momentum on social media, this was not something that they were going to do. It is not supported on either side of politics. So, what else have we got here? Um, oh, yeah, and it makes the point that we bring in more money in the beer excise tax than we do on the
Yep.
PRRT, Petroleum Resource Rent Tax.
I think it's like
Um,
Oz Punters or Punters Go or wherever the fuck that curly blonde haired fuck is.
yeah,
Like channel name is. You know the guy I'm talking about.
yeah,
Bit of a little bitch, but he does actually harp on about this. It's like, yeah, we really don't touch our natural resources sector with any kind of tax or
right.
like
Now,
lease payments and etc. We don't. It's true.
yeah, yeah. But look, one thing they're doing, which is actually sensible, is that East Coast LNG exporters must sell 20% of their gas on the Australian market. So, yeah, that's what we call a gas reservation scheme. We've noticed I said East Coast because it
Mm.
already applies here in WA. We started doing this at the state level about 15 years ago, and it's worked. You know, the East Coast has talked a few times about the possibility of running out of gas, only temporarily, of course. Here in WA, though, never been an issue. Okay, loser, travelers. Oh god, entry and exit
Yep.
fee going up. So yeah, simple one there. Loser, green hydrogen. Oh god.
what
So,
what have I been saying for years?
yes.
Opinion.
So they're pulling hundreds of millions of dollars out of Hydrogen Head Start. So this was a program that offered tax credits for projects producing hydrogen from renewable energy because the program is not being adopted as anticipated. So, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure when Fortescue Futures like literally liquidated an entire building with like 150 fucking engineers and other support staff, I think that was the fucking coffin nail in green hydrogen. By the way, just for people listening, green hydrogen is when you use like solar panels to like split, you know, desalinated water, which is already fucking expensive, energy expensive, into hydrogen and oxygen, and then store the hydrogen like fucking cylinders so it can be used as like a clean fossil fuel.
Hmm.
Again, harp on this again. The only workable version of like hydrogen energy is when you get LPG gas, and then you basically use superheated steam to split it to basically denature the entire alkyne or the entire molecule into CO2 and hydrogen gas. And then you pump the CO2 back into the fucking ocean to acidify the water and kill all the wildlife.
So is Snowy Hydro 2.0, is that blue hydrogen?
No, that's just snowy hydro is that's hydroelectric, so it's using the fact that water is moving.
Uh,
Yeah, so yeah, the hydro and that one says a hydroelectric. So that's just water going from a high point to a low point, spinning turbine. It's the Hoover fucking dam, basically.
right.
We're talking about making a fuel here, making something you can burn.
Yeah.
So in this case, hydrogen gas, which is perfidious. I've said this 1,000 times. Like one of the most shitty gases to store ever is hydrogen gas because you have to use metal hydrides to store it safely. Because if there's like industrially, we use helium to test if their system is perfectly fucking sealed and etc. Helium is twice the size of hydrogen, so. If the industrial high rank is using an atom or a molecule that is twice the size of the one you're using, something is going to be a fucking pain in the fucking ass to store.
Right. And by the way, yeah, they're looking to save now $1.3 billion on the money that they're pulling from green
Yep.
hydrogen. That would easily be eaten up by the cost blowouts from Snowy Hydro and
Oh, easy.
a myriad of other green energy projects.
Just call them up and ask if they've hit another rock. Different type of rock, sir.
Okay, so winner, higher skill migrants. Oh,
Oh,
God.
fuck.
So here we go. So the permanent migration program will be maintained at 185,000 places next financial year, with most of that being prioritised for migrants already in Australia. About 55,000 offshore places will be given to mostly high-skilled migrants, quote unquote, which the government says will reduce pressure on total migration. What?
Yeah. No, they're basically they're putting money towards the speed line the system for like, oh, these are high quality people. Definitely. It's not like the I literally had a coworker in my last job who was a high quality or a skilled migrant entry to Australia. It was like, oh yeah, by the way, I got my degree through a degree mill. But I did study here when I got here. That was his qualifier. Oh, I studied when I got here,
Yeah.
but yeah, I got my shit through a degree mill. That's what they're talking about, putting money to speeding up the system.
No, the amount of people who actually come in who are what you would call highly skilled, is very low. And then when you further look at it as like, do those skills translate into being used in the construction sector, which of course is what we need to build new houses and everything, it falls even smaller. It's a ridiculously small percentage. So no, I
Oh
mean,
yeah, no, literally the same coworker I'm talking about right now. he came to Australia under the guise that he had like a business degree and a construction management diploma. That was the guise he came in. And he was, checks notes, functionally a gopher for a production warehouse.
Right.
Yeah. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit.
Yeah. And I mean, and also I don't see why we can't do these two things at the same time. One, increase the amount of skill migration, but also decreasing the overall amount of migration. I can't see why we can't do those two things at the same time.
Well, again, they're saying that they want like a goal, or at least the coalition saying they want a goal of like 165,000 a year. And I think I saw someone on Twitter say like, "Oh, why didn't they say that they want zero, or maybe they'll deport people and then just do their goal anyway?" And then someone snapped back with like, "Is like, dude, you do realize like what they're saying is we're going to do this amount, so then you know, like it's not unreasonable and investors don't freak out and start calling us racist." But we're actually probably going to end up doing about 500,000. Really?
Right, of course. Well, look, already what I have seen about, because apparently Angus Taylor is proposing extreme cuts to migration, and he just announced this in his budget reply speech. The ABC pointed out that the business lobby is very concerned about that. Well, yes, they are very concerned about that. And that's why what he is actually promising won't happen. Okay?
Yep.
Because of the fact that he's fucking bought and paid for by them, and so is Labour. So, no. Rest assured, all the fucking evil Nazi stuff that people think the Liberal Party is doing, like, if any of you people are listening, honestly, don't worry. All of that stuff will never, ever happen, okay? Like, you have nothing to fear. Just like people thought that Trump was going to implement right-wing debt squads and like, deport the entire mestizo population of America back to South America. No. You have nothing to worry about. That is never going to happen. Okay, so the test for who to accept as a permanent migrant will be reformed to select better educated, higher skilled, and younger migrants overall. All right, but we've been told that for years. I don't see how that's actually going to help. So they also say here that there is bad news for backpackers, with more controls coming for the Working Holiday Maker visa program, which lets young travellers stay in Australia longer and undertake short-term work. Fruit picking is what they usually do. So a ballot system will be expanded to better manage the program and ensure fairer allocation that supports Australia's national interests. In terms of overall migration to Australia, net overseas migration will rise by just shy of 1 million people between 2026 to 27 and 28 to 29. Yeah. If you look at post-COVID levels, apparently Labor have slashed migration by 45%. Now, of course, that in itself is misleading, because when you talk about COVID numbers, they were artificially high to make up for, the 2-year drought that we had during COVID, during restrictions and lockdowns and all that kind of thing. We turbocharged migration after that. So that was an outlier. So it's not fair to compare current rates to what happened just slightly post-COVID. But even then, if you just have a look at the average migration numbers prior to COVID, they were around 200,000. Okay? We're still taking in well in excess of 200,000 people a year. Well in excess.
But we need to make up for this deficit. Like, my Ghost Lot production company didn't increase its profits by the amount that I really kind of wanted it to during that period of time. So, I don't know, Infinite Indians. That's what we need. It's the right thing to do.
Okay, here's a loser. Tobacco revenue. Well, I'm sure listeners have heard us laugh about this for a long time, but the government has had to mark down its expected revenue over 5 years by $8 billion. That is a shit ton.
God
So
damn.
that is $1.2 billion more lost revenue than it thought it would lose in this year's budget alone. So yeah, and they'll probably keep losing money because they keep spending it on trying to crack down on the illicit trade, rather than actually taking the much more sensible option, which would be to reduce the excise tax. But no, of course they won't do that.
No, just
Okay,
put more arsenic in it. Kill them.
loser, older Australians. So they're
Fuck
scrapping
no.
an extra private health insurance subsidy for people aged over 65. So that means that around 3 million Australians have to pay an average between $226 and $255 more a year. So people younger than 65 receive a 24% rebate. This change means that the rate will be applied to all Australians regardless of their age. So I've heard people refer to this as an anti-boomer budget, mainly because of the property investor stuff, of course. But you can see there's other little things in here. So this, I guess, is, they're talking about like the increasing amount of Gen Z voters that are coming onto the electoral rolls now, many of whom will be voting for the first time. Yeah, like for a long time, both the coalition and Labor, I think, have been sort of favouring their boomer baits, and not just because, not just with like property policy, but also things like what we refer to as middle class welfare. So that includes things like private health subsidies or rebates, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So it looks like they are kind of rolling back that stuff a little bit now too. Okay, winner, aged care. So an additional 5,000 residential aged care beds annually. So they've reversed their decisions to remove government funding for some in-home aged care services for older Australians, some of whom were actually left to paying up to $50 an hour for help with things like showering and other tasks. So,
yeah. I think we skipped over the loser of the.
It's pretty expensive.
I think we skipped over the NDIS, the loser NDIS, or is it further down on your list?
No, it's further down.
Okay, perfect. Okay, well, yeah, we'll get to that then. But yeah, no,
Oh wait, no, we didn't. Sorry, my fault. Yeah,
no.
we skipped the NDIS. Well, yeah, we'll go back after we do this one.
Yeah, perfect.
So, what would be NHK? Okay, yes. So NDIS loser. No surprise there. So we know this is costing us over $50 billion a year now. That is way ahead of what they predicted. So they're looking to reduce the annual rate from about 10% a year to 5 to 6%. Usual stuff, we know they're kicking around 160,000 people offered. Many of them have some form of autism. So the budget forecast spending growth will drop below inflation to about 2% a year over the forward estimates before returning to 5% over the medium term for 2020. And this is projected to save $37.8 billion over the forward estimates.
Yeah, like, look at this. Like, we didn't really need to do these kinds of cuts. We didn't really need to remove people with autism from this. We didn't really need to do any of this at all. We just needed to not have a population that believed that getting one over on you was being better than you. We didn't have to have these, ethnic NDS providers that flex their luxury cars on the business page of their NDIS provider company's Instagram.
Yeah,
which
well, I
but
mean
that happened. We
that
didn't need to
just
do
wasn't
that.
taken into account in the modelling
No.
because we had far less of those people back in 2012 or whatever, whenever it was that Julia Gillard introduced it.
Yeah.
Um, you've got to take the increasing non-white population into account whenever you make estimates like this. Otherwise, your
And
estimates will be wrong.
and may the the Fuhrer in the sky forgive me for saying this, but like Drew Pavlou and PDZ's work and actually physically going door to door and knocking on these people was very eye opening. I myself took it upon myself to go and find the NDS provider that led that family with the two severely autistic children to suicide. I
Yeah.
found them and I reported them my fucking self.
Did
And
you?
yeah, no, it's yes. Yeah, they were basically the only one that provided it was Autism WA Netherlands.
Oh, okay.
So they're gone.
Yeah, because I mean,
So
they
they
were
can't.
actually from a pretty well-to-do family as well.
Yeah, they were getting drained. They were getting scammed.
Yeah, okay, but look, so one thing that Labor has done though is they've said that they're going to spend $2 billion a year on the Thriving Kids program. That is to support children with autism and other neurodevelopment conditions, people who are neurodivergent. So they're kind of saying, don't worry, if you do get kicked off the NDIS, there's still other avenues that you can take. Um, and yeah, I mean, look, if it's what they call low functioning autism, because autism is recognized as a spectrum now.
Screaming, spurging around in a chair.
Yeah, I mean, they're people who genuinely do need support. That's definitely true. Uh, if you've got high functioning autism, and if you ask me, a lot of people who are diagnosed like that actually don't have autism. That's my opinion, but nonetheless, those people don't need assistance. They don't.
Yeah.
They're able to work. They're able to earn money. So I don't see anything wrong with kicking them off a system that they don't need.
Yep.
Okay, now here's a loser: the fraudsters and shonks of the NDIS. People we were just talking about. Um, so it is estimated that about 10% of payments made to participants each year are lost to inflated invoices, organized crime, or incorrect payments. And that totals as much as $4.6 billion a year. Um, okay, so, and they're also saying that this crackdown also is, to a lesser extent, found in Medicare and the PBS, and they're projecting savings of over $820 million over the next 4 years uh, by cracking down on these people.
Yeah. Well, we shall see. Unless they literally start going door to door and kicking places down and finding all our leering centers, then no, I don't think so.
Right. Okay, winner, health. So the green Medicare card. Albo kept flashing this during the election campaign last time, saying this is all you need for your visit to the GP. And then the coalition responded by holding up two cards, one the Medicare card and the other being the credit card, saying, no, 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 actually, you'll need both because you'll be paying through the nose for all of this. So they will be putting an extra $25 billion into public hospitals over the next 5 years. That includes $1.8 billion over 5 years to keep walk-in urgent care clinics up and running. They're going to increase the Medicare levy low-income threshold, so about 1 million Australians on lower incomes will continue to be exempt from the levy or pay it at a reduced rate. Okay, winner, business. So the buzzword here is productivity, which we're told now has hit a 60-year low. It really you do actually have to go back decades now. It's amazing.
Yep.
So, Labor is slashing the cost of businesses to comply with government regulations by around $10 billion a year. Sounds a bit optimistic to me. So, the government will expand venture capital tax incentives to help startups and growing firms. The government will reintroduce permanent 2-year loss carryback for all companies with up to $1 billion in turnover, starting from July 1 this year. The loss carryback is expected to help up to 85,000 companies each year. All right.
Oh, yeah.
Winner, fuel supply. So more than $10 billion will be spent on strengthening Australia's fuel security to ease supply constraints caused, of course, by the war in Iran. The government will increase the minimum stockholding obligation for every type of fuel by 10 days. This will ensure at least 50 days of supply for jet fuel and diesel and 37 days for petrol. Okay, and then they've got other things in there that we've kind of gone through a few of those on the show as well.
Yeah.
Winner, small business. So, small businesses struggling through the economic crunch are set to get a COVID-era style tax lifeline. So business will be able to reduce the profit they reported in the previous 2 years because of recent losses. That means a smaller retrospective tax on businesses in those years, and in many cases, a refund from the ATO. That is that policy known as loss carryback. So sounds like they're just saying, okay, you can point to previous years where you haven't done that well in terms of your profit margins, and they'll give you a little bit of a tax break to make it a bit fairer.
Okay.
Winner, EV drivers.
Bullshit.
So,
they're all on the fucking track we were talking about. Now they've got rid of the tax break for like, what is it, like exotic expenses or some shit.
Yeah, so I thought this one was going to come in as a loser, actually, because I thought it had sort of become a victim of its own success. Like, we artificially boosted the supply of EVs, and then, of course, the Iran war pushed that even further. So anyway, the discounts, though, on electric vehicles have been wound back to an extent, but not entirely. So they're saying that the cost of...
We're not at rape wagon yet, but we're on the track to rape wagon.
Yeah. Well, look, it makes this point. The scheme has cost taxpayers 10 times the $90 million it had originally forecast. So, yeah, they ended up getting a lot more take-up than what they were expected. And so they had to keep forking out those subsidies. So from April 2027, the tax exemption will still apply to electric vehicles costing less than $75,000, but those above that threshold will only get a 25% discount on the fringe benefits tax. Okay, and then from April 2029, all EVs below the luxury car tax threshold will receive a 25% discount. So they're winding it back a bit.
Yeah, I was going to say, they got the discount is getting worse. And soon it's not going to be a discount.
Right.
This is the trajectory that we're on. Audience, what we were literally telling you about for fucking years.
Okay, winner, Victoria.
Should never have won.
They get $3.8 billion for the controversial suburban rail loop. And I guess we all know that Victoria needs a bit of a funding lifeline, considering how much debt they are in. So the first stage of the suburban rail loop came in at $34.4 billion, which has yeah, certainly contributed to the budget blowout that they've had in Victoria. So they've been holding the begging bowl out, and well, Albo's there to support his Labor mates, I guess. Um, Loser, motorists. Um, of course. So remember,
Yeah.
right now you're actually paying 23 cents per litre less than what you usually do for petrol. That is going to be wound up in July. Okay,
I was
so
gonna say doesn't feel like that anymore. I remember freaking out and seeing diesel prices, and then I literally was when got diesel like 2 days ago, and I was like, "Oh, these are more than the diesel prices I was freaking out about." Oh wait, we've got a discount on this shit, don't we?
that's right. Yeah, so I mean, look, if you thought $1.75 a litre was cheap, oh shit. Sorry to tell you. I mean, look, we're probably not going to go back to like the 235 uh, per litre prices that we had, not too long ago. But no, look, you'll be spending a lot on fuel for a long time to come, I think. All right, now here's one of our favorites, guys. Winner, Bondi Royal Commission. All right, so we are going to have $604 million. I've seen figures higher than that, by the way, so I'm a bit skeptical about the figures that the ABC is putting here. But anyway, apparently $604 million over 5 years into measures targeting hate speech, violent extremism, and social cohesion. That includes $43 million over 2 years for immediate mental health support to the Jewish community, broader Bondi community, and first responders. No, I think that $43 million will go entirely to the Jewish community, actually. Um,
Yep.
Remember they had that $25 million for social cohesion in, I can't remember if it was the last budget or not, and they just gave it all to Jewish groups. And then,
Yeah, they also had
like,
the Islamophobia envoy, and then literally like, oh,
yeah,
we're gonna give we're gonna money to the Islamophobia envoy. Checks notes, the dude fucking dumped it all into a whole bunch of Jewish NGOs.
yeah, but also, I mean, look, this is prior to Bondi, and it's prior to the anti-Semitism envoy and Islamophobia envoy. Uh, I remember at the time, Muslims got, I think it was $1.5 million, whereas one Jewish group, one, got 25 million.
Yep.
So, you know. And by the way, if diversity is so positive, why do you have to spend multi-million dollars like preserving it? Like I thought the benefits kind of flowed naturally, yet we're always trying to contain it. And yeah, well,
Yeah, well.
they're all talking points from us. Okay, anyway, haven't actually finished this one yet. So it also includes $102 million over 4 years to the Executive Council of Australian Jewry to strengthen security for Jewish communities. Yeah. And I think, by the way, it was the ECAJ who received that $25 million grant I just mentioned.
It was fucking
Um,
one of them at least.
yeah, yeah. The government is also providing $69 million over 4 years to the Australian Federal Police for its National Security Investigations Team, as well as $25 million over 5 years to strengthen firearm import controls. Now, that first one, the $69 million and the investigation teams, that is targeting what they call online radicalization. So if you're listening to a podcast such as The Racist War and Everything, well, that's what we're talking about. They want to monitor people who are listening to shows like ours. That's not,
Hey,
I'm not
the
being
government
hyperbolic.
thinks you're cool.
That's $69 million to, and I mean,
It's
what do these people
$69
do?
million to ensure that the government actually thinks you're cool for listening to us.
Can you imagine being like one of these people, one of these bureaucrats or members of the AFP? Like you get paid to listen to the racer or you get paid to listen to the Blair and Joel show, something like that. Um, I mean, I thought it was hilarious. I know they're not making streams at the moment because obviously there's a lot of
Yeah. Oh
legal
yes.
problems going on. But I remember that there was some episode where Thomas Sewell said that basically, if you go after my family, I will respond with violence, which should not be a controversial thing to say,
No.
by the way. I think
I
most
think that's.
parents would actually say, yes, I will use violence to defend my children. I don't see that as an extreme thing.
I'm pretty sure that like all of nature and like literally like all of everything from like fucking pre-Lucasite fucking life would do that too.
Yes. But what I found hilarious about that, when that finally did reach the media, that was about 3 months after that episode streamed, you know? So, like, whoever they've got listening to this stuff, they must have a shit ton of backlog because they only
Someone's
realized
being
it was
lazy.
like 3 months after their broadcast.
Well, I mean, did you see that post? It was like $15 for every Jewish podcast you listen to. Personally, I think they should up the prices. I don't think I could do that for $15.
Yeah, that'd be hard. um, yeah, so and look, why is it then that if we're paying all this money, $102 for Jewish security, but at the same time we have to beef up public resources as well? You know, they're supposed to have their own private security that is still publicly funded, but at the same time they have to provide ample amounts of state police and federal police, sometimes even ASIO.
Yep.
All right, winner Centrelink. Oh wait, no, sorry, skipped one. Loser, Inland Rail. So yeah, basically just infrastructure cutbacks there. Winner, Centrelink. So social services getting a $1.7 billion boost over 2 years. So that's being funneled into frontline staff at Centrelink. Yeah, you guys have a tough job, I must admit. I have been on Centrelink before, being a student and whatnot, and I'm actually old enough to remember like going into the office itself, and holy shit, did some of the staff get abused there, and that's shit you should not have to put up with.
I used to share a lunch bar back in the day with Centrelink workers because there was like a Centrelink office at the ass end of the industrial park. And God, I was like fucking like early 20s or some shit. But yeah, no, the fucking stories that they'd come up with was like, oh yeah, like we used to have people come in, I think like as the payday was like, was it late Tuesday or early Wednesday at that point or some shit? And they'll have people come in like midday Wednesday because like whatever bank account that they fucking set up with it just didn't clear the payment until like several hours after the fact. And they would come in with crowbars and glass bottles and shit. Because obviously like, they're looking for their fix of whatever the fuck. And they were thankful for COVID because they actually finally got like screens put between them and the recipients.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they should have come way before that. Like, it's sad that it took COVID. Yeah. Because you know what? It's hell of a lot more dangerous to like cop a punch in the face than it is to catch COVID. All right, to your health.
To deal with like the impoverished, I'd say would be like the impoverished or needy for like most of it, from what they've told me. And then there's like 30% that are just like literal dregs of society.
Yeah, I'll tell you a story. I've got a feeling maybe I told this story before, but back when I was very young, like 16, I went into a Centrelink office with my friend because he wasn't living at home anymore. He very young age to leave house, but he had some family problems. So anyway, I just waited there in the office for him, and this guy, an Aboriginal guy, came in with what we called back then a boombox, this big stereo, and he was carrying it like on his shoulder, and this is how he was listening to his music for the day. And he came in, I think it was Dr. Dre playing, and it was just fucking booming. from this stereo, and everyone, of course, turns to look at this guy. And he started doing like a little dance, like as he was moving. He cut the line, right? He just went in front of everyone, and then he slammed the boombox on the counter and turned it off, and then took out his papers and started yelling at the person behind the desk. And they were so terrified that they didn't even tell him, like, go back in line after that. And then when he finished, he put the music back on while it was still on the counter and put it back on his shoulder and did a dance again on the way out. Um, I will never forget that. And that was the first time I had ever gone into a Centrelink office before. So I've had almost lifetime sympathy for Centrelink workers after witnessing that.
Fair enough.
But I mean, the stuff even worse. At least he didn't assault anyone. It's not uncommon for Centrelink staff to get assaulted. Okay, winner, disaster relief. So an extra $2.5 billion over 5 years to fund disaster recovery. Winner, sport. 5% increase in spending on sport and recreation over the next 4 years. And finally, winner, financial abuse survivors. Yes, that is a new designated victim group. So about 1 million children in Australia receive financial support from a parent through child support. Women make up the majority, 83%, of parents receiving child support and are considered the most vulnerable to harassment or intimidation. $182.6 million has been allocated over 4 years to prevention programs, including training staff to better identify, escalate, and manage financial abuse risks. Yeah, well, look, prevention is better than cure. Don't be like Rosie Batty and have a child to a complete psycho and then wonder why he abuses your child or doesn't pay child support later on. You know, Molyneux did have a point.
Ladies,
Women
if you
should
don't
stop
have a
breeding with assholes.
ladies, if you don't have a decent father figure, just go down to your local naughty boys, the the guys that use edgy symbols and etc., and get them to vet the man for you.
Yeah.
I think you might have a better time.
Yeah. But yeah, no, I mean, look, this just goes back to the whole idiocracy thing. You know, people who don't think like that pump out more children, and yeah, it's just a mess. Whew, okay, so that is our coverage of the budget. Holy shit. I've got a feeling this episode might have to be split in two as well because we still have a lot to go. Okay, so
well, it's a budget episode. Normally we just do the fucking budget itself.
Yeah. Well, look, if you need a drop off anytime, Nolsey, just let me know and we can finish this in a day or two, whatever.
Oh no, I'm all good.
Okay, so we'll keep going for now, but yeah, just let me know if you need a drop off. All right, so guys, a lot of the stories.
Let me know, old man.
Okay. A lot of these stories that we're going through may not be entirely relevant now because they were pre-budget stories. A lot of them kind of making predictions about what was going to come. So I will try to sort through them best I can. But anyway, something that's been proposed is using AI for housing developers to get through environmental assessment processes. Yeah, this is not the first time I've heard about that idea or just using AI generally to get past regulatory hurdles. I don't see anything wrong with that. It speeds up the process. But again, we're talking about a very, very small thing in the scheme of things because migration is the issue, not waiting times. So homelessness in Wagga Wagga has increased by 500% in 4 years. Homeless people typically you only see in like the city centers. We're hearing more and more about it now, actually being in regional areas as well.
Which is
So
normally weird because normally in the regional area you can basically stay at the pub hotel for like $20 a day.
yeah, but even that is becoming unaffordable, I guess,
Which is horrific.
for some people. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so Tasmania's lower house has passed legislation to introduce a 5% levy on short stay accommodation that would be paid for by the visitor. So, think Airbnb, that kind of thing. Um, so the government says they'll use those funds for first home buyer stamp duty relief initiative, which is a state government project, a program, I should say, that they have in Tasmania for first home buyers. Um, it hasn't passed the upper house yet, so we'll wait and see what happens there. But yeah, again, this is like they're trying to encourage people to rent out the Airbnbs more often because sometimes they just are left
Yeah.
empty. Um,
Well, the
again,
thing is with
another
Airbnb, I think Airbnb is going off the cliff because people have just had really fucking spastic experiences with Airbnb.
yeah, you hear some bad stories. My experiences have been fine, actually. Not that I've done a lot of them, but um, when I went to Adelaide, I'd stay to one, and that was pretty good. Um,
Okay.
but
But
I
yeah,
don't
it's
know.
like
It's
hospitality
I,
is meant to be an industry. It's not meant to be like a fucking hobby project or a side investment for
yeah,
your normal life.
yeah.
Really? I mean,
But also,
personally, I
like,
did love inviting Stephen Wells into my hotel room
yeah, but
for an
like,
interview, by the way. Sorry.
yeah, 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 yeah. But I don't look when I'm on holiday. The place that I'm staying at, that's for me to sleep and store my things. I don't really care if it because I don't spend any time there. I'm only spend time there when I get back from what I've been doing. You know, as long as I can sleep there and not get robbed, like I don't really care what I've got. Um, okay. So the city of Port Phillip, they've made changes to their encampment laws from the local council there. So council officers now have the power to seize personal items from someone at an encampment, including bedding. Yeah, so we're getting to the point now where we got more of these so-called tent cities. And yeah, look, when you put a whole bunch of homeless, unemployed people together in one area, you get problems. Like we were talking last week about how what happens when you put skip bins in amongst those communities, and they kind of just attracts
Yeah.
masses of them, and then you start seeing things like discarded syringes and that popping up. It does happen. So yeah, a lot of councils are getting sick of it, and they basically just want to move these people on. Unfortunately, you just move them on to another council, and they have to deal with it. So yeah, they're not doing much other than just migrating the problem. Um,
Well, again, that's what both Seattle and LA itself was doing. Like from the late '80s onwards, it was literally just like, yeah, like we've developed this drug culture and drug acceptance culture, like socially, but really, like we're going to make sure that all this shit ends up in another state. I mean, Seattle was really because like Americans correct me if I'm wrong, but like I believe that Seattle became a shithole, or Oregon Seattle became a shithole because LAites flooded into it, and the same deal with Austin, Texas.
uh, could well be, and I'm assuming those people from LA are like Hispanics and blacks. Um,
Upstanding citizens, that's what we call them.
yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. So there was just generally some stuff here about various homelessness bodies, charities that are calling for a lot more money from the government. I'm not sure. Did we go through anything just then in the budget to do with homelessness? There's
Well,
obviously stuff to do
housing
with
housing
property.
rolls into homelessness.
Yeah.
We've talked we've hammered on that for ages. Like we're starting to see like um working class. When we got the working class homelessness now, and then we're starting to see the lower middle class homelessness.
Yeah. And sometimes just normal middle class, like lawyers sleeping in their fucking cars. Stuff like that now.
Yeah.
Um, okay. Oh, here was another pretty sad one. This is about the increasing amount of separated couples who continue living with each other post separation because they can't find an affordable rental.
Oh
Oh,
yeah, dude. Fucking.
holy shit!
Oh
Talk,
man.
talk about an inconvenience. Holy crap! Um, yeah, because I remember like whenever you used to hear about this previously, the idea of like a couple that's broken up, like still in the same house, you kind of laugh at it. Now it's like, it's a really bitter joke because it's not because they're not trying to get away from each other. They are. It's just there's literally nothing affordable. And I mean, in the case that they profiled in this story, they own the house together. But of course, one of them has to move out and rent. And they're just saying that, okay, we're still paying the mortgage off. And so that means
Yeah.
they've got to pay rent on top of that. And
Which
that
they
is
can't.
just not doable for a lot of people.
I know this is gonna be fucking retard brain to me, but like, imagine hearing your fucking ex-wife getting railed in the room next to you because the
Oh,
walls of the new fucking the new builds are fucking paper thin. Imagine the psychological. You would kill yourself, wouldn't you? I would kill myself. Would you kill
well, maybe
yourself?
that's just how. Maybe that's how she's getting the extra money to afford the rent. Oh,
Fucking Jesus. This is hell. This is
yeah. I mean, look, we're laughing, but I mean,
no. We're
this
laughing
is
because inside we are fucking like we're in that one scene in Event Horizon where the dude's holding each other's the other guy's eyeballs and it's like, this is your face. Like fucking. We're looking at hell right now. This is hell.
okay. Finally, in Brisbane, this is also about short term stay accommodation like Airbnb. The Brisbane City Council, they've backflipped on their promise to crack down on these short stay apps. Now, they wanted to introduce a permit system for people who are short stay providers. Um, so, pretty minimal baseline regulation for if you want to rent out an Airbnb, whatever. So the Lord Mayor has blamed the federal government for creating uncertainty in the housing market through its foreshadowed tax reforms. So, while we just went through that negative gearing and capital gains tax.
Yep.
So he said this: what has been discussed in recent days and weeks about changes to federal taxation related to housing investment has certainly created a high level of uncertainty in the market, creating more regulation, more red tape, and making housing investment even harder is not something we should be doing in this current situation of uncertainty. Um, okay, I get his point. He's saying, like, all right, more regulation isn't going to help. Um, but how else are you going to free up um, those short term stay houses, though? Because as we said, a lot of them do spend a lot of their time, sometimes most of the time, sitting there empty, just no one using them. Um, you know, there should be some incentive at least, to kind of push um, those property owners into the direction of, well, if not selling them, actually just renting them out. All right,
Yeah.
well, let's move on to immigration, our favorite topic. Now, please consider this when you hear Jim Chalmers saying that they've cut migration by 45%. So, Labor's prediction that net overseas migration would plummet over a post pandemic surge in students and temporary arrivals has been bucked with an extra 55,000 migrants forecast over the next 2 years compared to earlier projections. Okay. Now, they never meet their projections anyway, right? But now they've actually had to recalculate things because we can see that these numbers just don't add up. So it's 55,000 more people forecast over the next 2 years, but I guarantee it'll be even higher than that because, as I said, they never meet the projected numbers. It's always above that. Um, so the budget shows that net overseas migration is expected to jump to 295,000 people in the current financial year, which is up from 260,000 forecast in December. Net overseas migration is expected to remain higher again than previous forecast. Budget documents say the 2 year jump in migration can be partly attributed to a high number of New Zealanders travelling across the Tasman to
Shut the
work
fuck
in
up.
Australia's comparatively robust jobs market, as well as lower than expected rates of migrants on temporary visas leaving their the country when their visas expire. This, by the
I
way,
had
was like the only
yeah.
thing. This was like the only thing that Jim Chalmers was willing to admit to. By the way, when I saw him interviewed on 7:30 about the budget, he admitted he was like, "Oh yeah, some people are overstaying their visas, and that's accounted for a little bit more people." That's all he was willing to say.
Bullshit. I've spoken to both Jordan about this and back in the day, another software engineer from New Zealand. And he was like, yeah, basically like it's really easy to get like a visa in New Zealand and it's transferable to Australia. But it's harder to get in Australia. So what they do is they apply for it in New Zealand and sometimes they even get PR, sometimes even citizenship in New Zealand. And then they just immediately go to Australia. And it's literally like it's like, oh yeah, like back in the day we were talking about the Perth domestic to Heathrow flight, which I don't think they'll probably be doing anymore. And it's like, oh yeah, like you think it's gonna be there's Heathrow, it's Heathrow London. It's gonna be a whole bunch of Anglo-Saxons coming out that gateway.
No.
No, in both cases.
Right. Yes. I mean, we've always had this issue with New Zealand. A lot of people say that, like, there has been a perception in Australia for a while that New Zealanders are just like lazy free riders on the Australian system. Well, that's becoming true. It's becoming true. It never used to be the case because, yeah, the people who are coming in now, originally they actually came from Tonga, right? They went to New Zealand and then they went to Australia, but their choice of location was always Australia. That's the main problem that we've got is all these bloody islanders that are offloaded on us now. Okay, so I'll just read out a bit more from this article. The uptick over the next 2 years follows a number of migrants in the financial year 24 to 25 being revised down to 305,000 people from 310. While acknowledging that net overseas migration is forecast to be moderately higher than previously expected, budget documents say migration policy changes will put downward pressure on the figures. Part of that includes crackdowns on visa routing, as well as reform of low migrant skills. Okay, so this is the government acknowledging that, yeah, okay, fine. Net migration is higher than what we anticipated it to be. But don't worry, because the new measures we've announced in the budget are going to put downward pressure on the figures. Is that right? Why did you have to revise up the 2-year estimate by 55,000 people then?
Well, he's going to get raped the same way that Coles is when it came to prices are down discounts. Oh yeah, by the way, they just got fucked on that today. Finally found guilty, so I'm allowed to say that.
I saw that. Yeah, it was like misleading advertising or something.
Yo, this is misleading fucking politics now, isn't it?
Yeah. So no, I mean, okay, fine. Just because we have lower amounts than post-COVID levels, which was an anomaly, an outlier, don't believe the government when they tell you that they're slashing migration. It just isn't true. Okay. So the ISIS brides are I just thought this was interesting because it gives you just an inside look into who these people are. So this came from the ABC. So the people who arrived in Sydney and Melbourne, it was 4 women and 9 children, a 53-year-old grandmother and her daughters, who are aged 33 and 31, as well as a former health science student. Um, so I think this was actually the ABC's attempt to just kind of humanize these people, pointing out that they just hold regular jobs like all the rest of us. Okay, fine. But then we read this next story, thanks to the noticer for this. Four Muslim
Thank
men
you.
have been arrested in a series of raids by armed police for allegedly possessing and distributing ISIS propaganda in Melbourne. Um, I have to make this point again. Even if so called ISIS brides and their children, and even their husbands, even if they don't pose an immediate security threat to Australia, they will always pose a threat to Australia's social cohesion. And believe it or not, we're very supportive of social cohesion on this show. I know it's become a bit of a catch cry term that we've been using and everything, but no, we are the real ones who support social cohesion because what we support would actually lead to social cohesion. Putting a
Monoculture.
whole putting a whole bunch of people with incompatible cultures and language and religions and yes, racial identities together is exactly how you destroy social cohesion. So, like, I am far, far more concerned about the thousands of Arabs that we take into Australia each year. I'm far more concerned with them than I am the 13 people who we recently received because of their connection to ISIS. There's a shit ton more Muslims in Australia who are connected to ISIS than what you think. And that story from the noticer is just one small example of that.
The
Um,
construction of a caliphate is literally a tenet in Islam.
yeah, it is. And, I don't really do the counter jihad stuff
No,
anymore.
we don't.
But
Yeah, like we haven't done that in fucking God. Finian might be coming up to half a decade now.
yeah, I mean, I used to be into that stuff. I used to read Robert Spencer, that kind of thing.
Actually, fuck it. Pre-COVID, the race wasn't even doing that. So yeah, no, like it might be coming up to 8 or 9 years now. So yeah, like we're not about that stuff, but like you can't turn a blind eye to it. Like some of like the Duganist types and like the weird kind of like I'm very far right, I'm ethno nationalist, but I do want to align myself with the Muslim types. It might not go well on the American network that this goes on, but like you still have to be aware of it. You still have to be aware that like
Yeah,
Rotherham was a thing. You still have to be aware that Luton is a thing. You still have to be aware that Birmingham is a thing. That is a thing that happens, and it's not. They're there because of the Jews, but they're not doing it because of the Jews.
yeah, and I've come to see Islam as more of a racial expression of who Arabs are. That's really what it is,
Again,
and
I had a
it
conversation
serves
with
as
my.
such a strong identifier for them.
Again, find me a metric between Pakistan, at least the borderlands of Pakistan and India, that is different. Find me a metric in terms of crime, in terms of rape, in terms of trash,
Yeah,
in terms of disparity. The only thing you'll probably be able to find is pork and beef consumption.
yeah, that'll be
That's
about
it.
it. That's really it. Um, so no, I mean the TLDR on that is my problem is with Arabs, not with Muslims. The kind of Islam that Lebs practice is a hell of a lot different than what Bosnians practice. Bosnian Muslims and their cultural practices are essentially non-consequential in Australia, as far as I'm concerned. I just don't really care. Um, but I certainly care about Lebanese rape gangs who um, specifically target Australian white women for rape.
Yep. Again,
much more
I
concerned
believe,
about
I
that.
don't think it was your quote, but I believe you're the first to say it on this show. But like, we didn't know gang rape until we had like the Lebanese migration.
Yeah, if you look at the judge in the Bilal Scaff case in Sydney, that's essentially what the judge said. Um, they had never, not just for him, but in the entire Australian legal history, there had never been anything like that. What was presented to him, which was, Bilal Scaff, some of his relatives and friends, uh, just creating these roaming gang rape uh, groups in Western Sydney and deliberately targeting white women. They admitted that themselves. They deliberately targeted them. Um,
Hmm.
and we wonder why we had the Cronulla riots. Okay, so all right. So look, we're going to comment much more on this next week, but Angus Taylor. Uh, my understanding is that
Anus
he
tickler.
thinks
There we go.
migration numbers would be capped to match housing availability. Oh my god! If only. If only.
I got
Uh,
again. Look how desperate they're getting. Look how desperate they're getting.
yeah.
You you wouldn't have heard this kind of rhetoric under fucking ScoMo. What fucking 6 years ago?
So here's an article that I just inserted into my prep before the show. I have not had time to read it, but just like to read the title. It says Coalition wants to slash migration, but businesses say economy needs skills. So, reading the summary, business groups are unified in their call to keep net migration numbers unchanged after opposition leader Angus Taylor called for numbers to be cut. The AIG and the ACCI say migration is key to managing supply in the economy, and businesses remain in need of the skills it brings into the country. Mr. Taylor will deliver his speech tonight. Okay, he already has. Yeah. Now look, the Greens. Please pay attention here. When you keep going on about how the rich use migrants as a scapegoat, um, and that the real reason why housing prices are so high is because it's just rich people benefiting from a generous tax system and then demonizing those poor migrants in the process. What a load of crap. They
Yeah.
love those migrants, okay? And they want them coming in. Uh, I mean, look, they're saying that they want these numbers unchanged. No, they don't. They want more. All right. That's just the bare minimum for them, okay, is our current rates of migration.
When these
Um,
people see an inflatable dirigible, they see like a dollar an odd amount above that.
yeah. And so uh, this idea that, like, capitalism um, discriminates on the basis of race, or that it actually demands that migration rates be cut while at the same time capital can freely flow um, with reduced trade barriers. No, it works both ways, okay? When they talk about a mobile flow of capital, they mean a mobile flow of labor as well. It applies just as much.
Just
Um,
eyes and hands. That's what it is.
yeah. And, I do like the saying that the only color capitalism cares about is green. Um, I was very reluctant, being a former libertarian, to kind of meet eye to eye with that.
Yeah.
But no, it's true. Um, I'm not
But
I'm not a
again, like
socialist, but I'm certainly anti-capitalist to a large extent.
yeah, I was gonna say like the idea or the enemies that be, what they do is they find a way to fuck with you and they make it profitable.
Yeah, and immigration is the ultimate scam because it's a Ponzi scheme, and yes, they make enormous amounts of money out of it. And also, by the way, talking about demonizing of migrants, like, what we do on this show is we demonize the politicians and their Jewish masters. All right, we don't demonize the migrants. Doesn't mean we like them. And I would say that if you can make life difficult for them, in fact, I would encourage you to do so because it encourages them to leave the country, and that's what we want. But, I can't really blame people on an individual level for looking after their own benefit by going to a country that has more economic opportunity for them. I can't blame them or them wanting the best for their family. I'm talking about the people who actually make it possible for them, the people who let them in. And that's our government. That's the people who are supposed to represent us.
Again,
They are
said
the
earlier
people
in the
that we go
show.
against on this show.
Yeah, like again, like I said earlier on this show, like literally this entire problem could be fixed with a stroke of a pen.
It really could. If there was the political will, all of this stuff is fixable. Anyway. Well, here's a white pill for you. It's not much of one. But the Iranian man who said that it would be wrong to send him to Nauru because he'll be, he's actually argued a couple of things. One is that Nauru is a backwards third world hellhole that doesn't like gays. There might be some truth to that.
But yeah,
this
very
guy,
very few people visit Nauru. It might be backwards, it might be a third world, and you might just consider stop lying about being gay.
So this guy, he's bisexual, and the
Fuck
reason
off.
why we can't send him back to Iran is because the courts have essentially decided that he would face persecution of some form in Iran if he were to be sent back.
Okay, we'll send him to Tel Aviv. It's the gayest city in the world, right?
Yeah.
Surely
So-
the gayest city in the world would accept one of their multicultural, diverse rainbow people and an Arab that, he's Iranian, so like we'll be
Yeah.
nice and say Persian. We'll be nice there.
But his
And,
second argument, though, is even more ridiculous because he's saying that due to health reasons, the hot and humid weather of Nauru would be bad for him. He's from Iran. He's from, like, the hottest, most humid part of the entire fucking world. What are you talking about? They really will just go for anything. They'll pluck out any argument at all in a desperate attempt to stay here. But anyway,
I can't remember his name, and I'm actually very sorry for not remembering this British fucking investigative journalist name. But he found this basically Arab looking street man, and he dressed him up like, oh, he just came off a boat, and obviously he was Urdu speaking or something like that, because he was actually ethnically whatever the fuck that is.
Yeah.
And he was like, oh yeah, so he hooked him up with these migration agents, and literally this migration agent is like, oh, I'm gonna charge you basically £500. You come to this place, and then I'll fill out your stuff in English for you. I'll fill out the little test thing in English for you, but you're gay, or at least bisexual. And literally, they had her on tape saying no. I don't want to be insulting here by saying that you are gay. I'm not saying that you're an effeminate man, but for the sake of staying in this country, you are gay. On video. I wish I had.
You are gay.
Yeah. Why are you gay?
Yeah, but then he actually says you are gay after that.
Well, to be fair, that was a very confusing, even for me. Julius, the woman man with a wife, that was a very, very confusing thing for me too. Looking at it the first time.
Okay. One final story on migration. Recent immigrants have an easier time finding work than ever before. The premium for Australian Australian-born people, has essentially disappeared since the end of the pandemic. So the unemployment rate for recent migrants Well, and I love this bit. With the exception of Northwest Europeans, has
Oh,
always has always been higher than the unemployment rate of Australian-born people. Yeah, that's because Australians are a Northwest European people. I mean, that is traditionally where
yeah.
we have gotten our migration from. We have got it from the UK, from Ireland, and from parts of continental Europe. But now, uh, these people have a much, much easier time finding work. Why is that? Well, because they parachute them into these jobs in things like rideshare driving, truck driving, um, working at service stations, uh, and to a very, very large extent, this is to do, well, it's two things. One, obviously, is ethnic networking. I mean, if you're a Pajit, pretty easy to get your cousin a job at the servo. Um, but the other reason is simply because, well, this is exactly what business wants. They want to import these poor people who are willing to work for very low wages, and they just want to get them started in that job as soon as possible. So, yeah, I find that very interesting because previously their unemployment rates had always been higher, and they'd always been higher for a very simple reason because they're not as skilled and they're not as higher agency as Northwest European people are. We are better, generally speaking, at getting jobs. But things change a bit when you're willing to work for peanuts.
Yes. When you're willing to get on your knees, prostrate yourself before the employer and say, "Boss man, please don't hit my tonsils."
Right. Okay, just need to pause here. All right. Next topic, Israel, Gaza, and anti Semitism. So, unfortunately, we have more charges for Joel Davis. So,
Yep.
this is to do with the protest that they did outside of New South Wales Parliament last year, calling for the abolition of the Australian Jewish lobby. We all know that this was the reason, really, why Joel was arrested in December of last year. It really didn't have anything to do with threats, so called threats to Allegra Spender. Um, and, you know, generally speaking, when you have committed an act of racial vilification, you know when it's happened. You know, it's pretty obvious. I mean, if you were out there calling for like the physical harm of Jews, we would all agree that Joel would have been committing racial vilification and he would have been arrested on the spot. So, my question is why is it that now, about what, almost 6 months after that protest, only now he is being charged? Uh,
Well, Finian, could I guess? Could I take a shot in the dark here?
yeah. Well, I mean, it took them that long to like do the legal gymnastics involved to get a charge. Now, he won't be convicted. I mean, if there's any semblance of justice left in this country, he won't get convicted. But, you know, I'll make this point again. Like, when you've broken one of these laws, it's always like very, very obvious that you have broken that law, and therefore there shouldn't be any delay in getting arrested. This is happening 6 months after they did this bloody protest. And by the way, as the notice point out in this article, this was police approved.
Yes.
That's right. They had permission from New South Wales Police to go ahead with that protest.
And was it Rabbi Vishayim? It's I don't know. Like I'll need to like drink an entire bottle of phlegm to pronounce his name. Um, said like, oh, they shouldn't have done that. They shouldn't have done that, but only now, and that's because they knew the first charges weren't going to stick, and they want to filibuster them legally, not politically, to make sure that none of this stuff gets to the actual, the High Court of Australia, because it's all unconstitutional.
Yeah. As we've seen with the protest laws that were passed by the New South Wales government, they were struck down. Um, those same kind of laws that were replicated in Queensland, they'll be struck down as well. There's no doubt about it. And yeah, again, just remember the process is the punishment. Okay, so yes, ultimately Joel Davis will likely be exonerated. But think of what he's gone through during that time. Think of the legal fees. Think about the months that he already spent in prison. Think about the strain that this has taken on his family. And remember, he is a dad now. Um, I mean, he wasn't even able to be there for the birth of his first child, for God's sake.
And then the fucking ABC, or it was the SBS or ABC, or what news agency went and stalked his fucking partner, this girlfriend.
Yeah, possibly both of them did that. So look, Joel was arrested again. However, this time he was granted police bail. So, yeah, I don't think they thought it was a good idea to give him like another 4-month stint in the lockup after just being cleared. So, and of course, look, he's got a shit ton of other stuff. While he was in jail, the charges just kind of kept piling up, and they were all to do with streams. So, you know what I was saying before about how these bureaucrats have like a backlog of content to go through? Well, there it was right there. They were still getting through it. And, I guess they found a few sound bites that they think maybe can kind of be construed as Joel breaking the law in some way. I don't know. There's a good chance
again,
he'll
like they
be found not guilty for everything.
again, fucking, they put Tom away and basically refused him court on something that I witnessed myself. Witness it not fucking happening.
Yeah. Okay. So the Royal Commission into Anti-Semitism and Social Cohesion, of course, is getting on, and we're at the public hearings phase of the commission. So lately we have been hearing from Jewish women in Australia, and we're being told that survey data is now telling us that 80% of Jewish women in Australia have experienced anti-Semitism personally or against an immediate family member in the last 2 years. So 81% of respondents had or had a relative who had experienced anti-Semitism since October 7, 2023. The survey found 20% of respondents of their relatives had experienced physical violence or verbal abuse. 69% said they had been called genocidal because they self-identified as Jews, Israelis, or Zionists. Look, I doubt the numbers. I really doubt that they would be as high as that. But look, white South Africans for years were told that they were white supremacists simply because they were white people living in South Africa. When you tell us that Israel does speak for the Jewish people because it's the Jews' only homeland, well, don't be so upset then when people look at the actions of the Israeli government and say, well, in a way, you're complicit. At a minimum, you're complicit, aren't you?
Oh, trust me. This is one of the things I actually throw at leftists because normally they don't want to engage in race-based dialogue. As they're like, okay, so like, who benefited from colonialism? Was it the actual colonists working for companies, international companies, Dutch East Indies, British Empire, Portuguese Empire? Like, who actually benefited from it? Who gained all the money? You know, who
Yeah.
gained the boons of colonialism? Or it was a whole bunch of international corporations that could afford long ships, not the people on long ships. I like to
Yeah.
throw that back in leftist faces sometimes. But yeah.
Right. Okay. Now, this story gave me a bit of a chuckle. This is about Malcolm Roberts. So he is the other Queensland senator that we have for One Nation, and he's actually been there for a while. He's been there since 2016. Uh, anyway, he was interviewed about well, many things, but they brought up the Bondi massacre, and he did not rule out the possibility of Bondi being a false flag operation. Um, Now, he said, I doubt whether it's a false flag, but I could be wrong. He said, I haven't got the evidence. Now, I wasn't entirely surprised when I saw this because Malcolm Roberts is a bit of a rightoid. Uh, he does parrot a lot of like the debunked global warming stuff. Like he'll harp on about the hockey stick and things like that. So it didn't surprise me entirely. But the conservative right, the Murdoch establishment, are very, very angry about this. And Jared Henderson wrote an opinion column in The Australian, basically saying that Malcolm Roberts needs to pull his head in here. And, you know, while it's okay to entertain conspiracy theories about things like climate change or whatever, do not ever, ever do that about the Jews. Um, Now, by the way, I'm not saying that Bondi was a false flag. In fact, no, I'll state categorically, no, I don't think it was. Um, but it's just amazing how the right jumps on something like this. Because, of course, if you say that Bondi was a false flag, what you're saying is that Jews actually set it up themselves and were willing to kill members of their own people to um, further their Jewish interests in some regard. Uh,
They have done, but not in this instance.
no. And I mean, I'll just simply ask the question like, is it really hard to believe that Muslims shot a bunch of Jews? I mean, come on. What is more likely there? You know, that shouldn't come as a
The only
surprise
weird
to
thing
me.
about this is it's in this side of the fucking this side of the is it hemisphere? If it's this, you know, this half of the world.
Yeah,
Do I just say this half of
you
the
know, because
world?
it's not meant to happen here. It's not. We have magic soil in Australia, you know, where everyone apparently leaves their ethnic hang-ups behind when they come here.
It's don't worry, like it wasn't like a whole bunch of Turkish terrorists didn't derail a civilian train to stop the landing on Gallipoli. Oh wait, boy, do I love having weird fucking people on this planet coming here.
Yeah, and look, Malcolm Roberts is also he makes good points as well in that, like, you know, so far the only thing we're talking about really is more gun reform in Australia to deal with this issue, and he's definitely got a point there. Um, if you look at the thrust of the recommendations made by the interim report, they were just talking about accelerating the national gun owner registrar. They were also talking about furthering the gun buyback program. Um, Kept pointing out that, yeah, apparently there's more guns in circulation in Australia now than there were prior to Port Arthur, the Port Arthur massacre. Um, to which I have to then say, well, okay, doesn't that prove then that gun reform actually didn't reduce the amount of massacres in Australia? Because if the supply of guns in Australia actually increased after Port Arthur, then shouldn't the amount of massacres have increased as well? But that didn't happen. Uh, I mean, we really only had one, and that was Bondi. And we're told that that's a terrorist attack, which is separate from like a domestic massacre. So, yeah, I mean, you have to question just how much of a good job gun reform is actually done in Australia. I would say basically none. Okay.
Or are some good guns, unfortunately.
So look, everyone breathe a sigh of relief. Sneako has been banned from ever entering Australia. So he did sneak in, pardon the pun, simply because the Australian government weren't paying attention to him. As soon as his presence here was brought to light, which Shari Markson, of course, claims credit for, Tony Burke wasted no time in kicking him out of the country. So since then, that visa has been cancelled and he's been put on the list. He will never ever be allowed back into Australia unless a future minister removes him from that list.
Chances of that? What's your over-under opinion?
Yeah. And the Australian have to point out that he's a convert to Islam.
Oh, yeah, well, whatever.
Okay, so the Minns government, they have passed legislation to strengthen the power of local councils to shut down unlawful places of worship. Now, why did they need to pass these laws? Because there were essentially like these improvised mosques that were appearing in Sydney. And they were doing things like setting them up near Jewish areas. Um, and yeah, I mean, look, it is sort of like an intimidation tactic. I don't deny that. You could even arguably say that some of the pro-Palestine protests, when they, marched through Jewish areas of Sydney, that may well have been intentionally provocative. But it's obvious, though, that there's no way we would have a law like this pass without pressure from the Jewish lobby. And Jews have been boasting about this, in fact. I saw this on Australian Jewish News. They were talking about this. So, yeah, mobile mosques have the chop. you can't you can't just set up some improvised thing that upsets the local Jew. Okay, now we've already kind of covered this, I guess, but yeah, it was anticipated that there was going to be $600 million for the next 5 years, basically on the Jewish community in Australia. Remember, it's usually much more than that. That's just direct money. Think of all the other ways they can siphon things. Right. So here, the share of the funding, $207.4 million. I remember when we went through the budget figures before, it was less than this amount. So, yeah, be skeptical about these figures that are being put out there. Anyway, it was to combat the influences of anti-Semitism, violent extremism, and hate. The largest line item under this over 2 years is to enhance capabilities to counter terrorism threats online and prevent extremism and youth radicalization. Yeah, so this is like the injection of funds to the Australian Federal Police to tackle online radicalization.
Again, I don't think I think I said even the last show, like they had to change their title, like, oh yeah, like funding will be put to spy on the Australian citizenship to funding will be put to targeting radicals who look to commit extremism on Australian soil. It's like, I think the first one's correct. And I
Yeah.
think you fucked up and figured out, like, that sounds bad.
Yes, definitely. Okay, on to climate and energy. Now, the finance minister said, Senator Gallagher, has said that the Albanese government could not keep spending on climate transition at the same rate as it did in its first term. So, we've already seen that they're winding back tax breaks for electric vehicles, but Katie Gallagher tells us that that's just the start of it. So she said that doesn't mean that the government is less ambitious in terms of lowering carbon emissions by 43%. She said, we have invested heavily in this area and the transition is underway. It's gaining pace. You can actually see that investment paying off, but you wouldn't expect to see what we've done in earlier budgets where we've kind of supercharged the investment. That's not sustainable. Yeah, so all those generous subsidies you had on your solar panels and all that kind of thing, she's saying that all of that is coming to an end now. Um, and that's good, actually. I don't have a problem with that. Now,
Yeah.
here in WA, our government is admitting, no, sorry, they're not admitting, but modelling is showing that our own state targets to reach net zero by 2050 are going to fail. So it found that solar, wind, and battery projects would need to be deployed at an unprecedented rate to achieve the target, with or without the Browse project going ahead. Um, Damn it. I remember I looked this up before what the Browse project was. Let me just. I
Double
looked it up
check.
so that I wouldn't have to do this. Okay, so it's operated by Woodside Energy. It's a proposed
Oh,
major
God.
offshore gas development in Western Australia. Um, so, yeah, this is said to be part of our emissions reduction plan because, gas is the lesser of the evils when it comes to fossil fuel.
Have you heard the
Less,
ads literally on our state media about, like, oh, we're tapping into natural gas because, like, we're backing up the renewables industry. Have you heard that?
Hmm.
Because
No,
they're
I haven't,
playing that.
but
We're
no,
we're
doesn't surprise me.
which we are literally paying taxpayer dollars for, like, LPG gas generator backup ads to be played
Yeah.
after they talk about their new windmills and solar panel plants.
Okay, now the WA government is admitting, however, that our greenhouse gas emissions may continue to rise. So, every state and territory has their own targets that are separate from the federal legislation to reach net zero by 2050. Um, but you may not know this, but WA is one of the few jurisdictions to not have done that. So we looked to set interim emission targets in 2023, but that legislation never progressed. Now, we were told that it would be replaced with the Green Energy Powerhouse Bill, which will scrap interim emissions targets and introduce a range of decarbonisation targets. So, yeah, we still are not going to have legislated targets in WA. Now, I don't think it's surprising that we stand alone here in comparison to other states. We run on the mining sector here in WA, even more than Queensland does. So it should go without saying that it is more difficult for us to decarbonise than it is for anyone else in Australia. Um, So even a Labor government has to admit that. And they have to admit that making legislation for emission reductions does not work, not in a state like ours. Okay. Um, Already gone through the gas reserves, so a couple of quick stories. So, strategic diesel reserve between 10 million and 20 million litres will be established in South Australia. We've got many other such schemes across the country. The Victorian federal governments have approved plans for a company to drill for offshore gas in waters near the 12 Apostles. So, yeah, hooray, we're in this period where even the ABC is like,
Oh
away
shit.
celebrating. Like, okay, it's good. Yeah, we've got new gas projects. Um, but might I remind people that the Greens' long-standing policy is no coal or gas projects, none. And that's been a policy of theirs for years now. I mean, does anyone really think that's feasible to have no new gas projects whatsoever?
Oh man, I love something that's 25 kilograms per 25 megajoules per kilogram. I'm just not going to touch it at all after we learned that peak oil wasn't a fucking thing.
Yeah.
And then I'm not going to fucking go to the next substance, which is clean, doesn't pollute the atmosphere at all. If you're really worried about that, and trust me, I could sit Finian down and talk about fucking carbon dioxide emissions and chemical equilibriums for ages, and blow your brains out. But yeah, we're just not going to touch that either.
No.
Oh, trust me, if a fucking alien fucking came back and looked at us at this point in time, it was like, oh yeah, wait, you figured out nuclear fission and you figured out decent models for it, and then you went back to burning fucking alkynes.
Okay. So the Northern Territory government will be liable for $75 million if the Tamboran Resources defaults on its Beetaloo Basin fracking project. Yeah, so gas is expected to flow from the Beetaloo Basin into the Northern Territory market later this year. But yeah, the Northern Territory government is on the hook for that bill if they can't repay lenders. I've already gone through that. Sorry, my post-budget prep is just a little chaotic because some of these stories are no longer relevant.
Easy.
This is something I can finally say to Jess Wilson and the Liberals in Victoria. Okay, you're finally getting some substance here. So they're saying that if they win government this November, they will pause and review the VNI West and Western Renewables link. What is that exactly? Those massive transmission lines that they are constructing in regional Victoria to fuel green energy projects. We've gone through this a lot.
Although I've now been noted data centers.
Oh yeah, I mean they're becoming a big thing as well. Yeah. But yeah, no, it's been cool to see. Actually, sometimes these people they turn up en masse on each other's properties to block people from developing those transmission lines on their property. Some property has been outright seized in regional Victoria. Others have been told, you can keep your land, but we're going to build on it. You don't get a choice in the matter. And green groups have only actually been concerned about streamlining that process, which basically meant you don't have community consultation. You don't actually talk to the stakeholders, the people whose property would bear these transmission lines. Now, I would prefer the Victorian Libs to just say, no, we're just scrapping this altogether. They're saying they will just pause and review it. Okay, so it's a little weak-kneed, but, you know, they're on the right track. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
This was interesting. So, some regional Victorians have started displaying the Australian flag upside down. Now, this is a sign of protest. Now, I actually took a photo of like some Pajit, or at least a guy I'm pretty sure he was a Pajit. This guy has a flagpole right outside his property, right on his front lawn with the Australian flag upside down. I think I might have shown it to you, Nolsey. It was somewhere in Perth. I took this photo. Now, generally speaking, when you do that, you're saying that there's like something wrong with the country. Fred Phelps
In naval
and the
signals,
Westboro Baptist Church used to do
Mayday.
this. Sorry?
In naval signals, it's Mayday. I had to learn that recently.
Yes.
Like,
yeah,
I was like, oh fuck. This is an oh fuck situation.
Yeah.
But also, it can be disrespect.
Yes. It can be basically fuck this country. Now, that Pajit that I mentioned, I'm quite sure that's why he's doing it. I don't actually know his personal reasons for it. I've never spoken to the guy. But these people, when they do it, they're not saying fuck Australia, but they are crying out saying what has happened to Australia. It's a sign of a country in distress. So they're just feeling that as Australians, they're not being given a fair go. And it's easy to see why. We have a tradition, particularly Labor has a tradition of neglecting regional voters. But now it seems like it's okay to treat them even worse because they've got to bear the brunt of these green energy projects. And who cares if it's going to interrupt their view or their land value or just be a general intrusion on their property? If you live in the inner city, why would you give a shit about that? So, yeah, to them, it's about hardship, it's about distrust, it's about a feeling that the government is no longer representative. They believe the country is in distress in some way. And I'd say I'd have to agree with them. Okay, now, Fiji will receive $30 million from the Australian government to help combat rising fuel prices. Right. So even though they could perhaps, say, lower the excise tax a little bit more than they have to make fuel more affordable for Australians, we're concerned with giving tens of millions of dollars to Pacific Island nations so they can have cost of living relief in terms of fuel prices. Why, oh why, do we fucking splash money on these countries? These pathetic... And remember, Fiji, what's the population of Fiji?
Fuck all, between all three islands. One good result.
These island nations, they're all tiny. Like, Fiji doesn't even have 1 million people. And then you've got a country like Tuvalu, which is 11,000 people, right? But we splash an enormous amount of money on all these people.
I'm still fucking pretty sure that Fiji is... I was going to say, like, I'm pretty sure that Fiji is within the American Navy point of view. Like, they're, like, wrap around, like, Hawaii and etc. But I guess we have to pay them too? Fuck.
Yeah, no, we do. Okay, we've covered the EV tax. Thousands of second-hand hybrid cars are going to be banned from entering the Australian market. Now, this is because of the revised vehicle emissions rules. So my understanding is this is basically a bit of a bureaucratic stuff-up by the government because the basic idea of the vehicle emissions rules is to stop or discourage high emitting cars. So, they'd prefer if you drove a Tesla in comparison to a Hilux, for example. But the revised rules, this says imports of secondhand Japanese hybrids will be progressively phased out as they don't meet Australia's new fuel standards. And that's because of differences in emissions testing requirements between Australia and Japan. Now, remember, a hybrid vehicle means it runs partly on electricity, meaning that obviously they are lower emitting vehicles compared to a petrol car.
We got the fucking Toyota RAV4, the modern one, everywhere. And by the way, you've seen it. If you're in Australia, look up Toyota RAV4 fucking 2021 model. You've seen it everywhere. That passes Japanese standards, and
but not
it's
ours.
fucking everywhere. It sounds like it. No, it did. It did.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah, that's the point. It did. The thing sounds like a fucking golf cart and can run off like 30 liters of petrol for about 4 weeks. How do I know that? I've driven one for 4 weeks.
Right. So here's a bit of the detail here. So although both Australian and Japanese standards adhere to the so-called Euro 6 standards, vehicles in Japan are tested for compliance at 80,000 kilometres, reflecting shorter average driving distances compared with Australia's 160,000 kilometre requirement. So simply because they've tested them under different standards, the hybrid vehicles come in as not meeting the mark, which is ridiculous because other cars that emit far more carbon do pass the standards. So wrap your head around that one.
Welcome to hell.
We're phasing out cars that are actually low emitting. Okay. All right, so look, that's pretty much it for climate and energy. 9:30 here. I'm pretty beat, Nolsey, so
already.
I think I'll probably just finish this show by myself tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
In my spare time.
I'm still available tomorrow.
Okay, well I'll hit you up if I do this early enough. But yeah, thanks for listening, guys. And you'll hear part 2. And scratch that. No, you won't. Nolsey and I, or maybe just me, will return to give you a catch-up episode, but that's all we'll do for episode 277. So, thank you for listening, and see you soon.